Okay, what is with Fonnie Willis? I thought she was supposed to be removed by now. Why are we even dealing with the Fonnie Willis of it all?
Well, you had senators come onto your show and talk about a prosecutorial commission was going to take care of business. 3 months ago, I was on your show calling for a special session to investigate and defund Fonnie Willis. I got no other signatures on that, not in the Senate, not in the House. We had one that started to sign and then flaked out. But then guess what? Yesterday, we start a special session. But in the governor's proclamation for that special session, not one word about Fonnie Willis or in a stolen election or the 19 that have been indicted. No, a federal judge said that our maps are racist, so therefore we have to go in and fix our maps. So we've got a primal cry of citizens all across Georgia calling for a special session to investigate and defund Fonnie Willis. But meanwhile, we can't get a special session. But if a federal judge whispers it, coughs a special session, we've got one.
So what happened? We were promised all this was going to happen, and here we got essentially nothing. Is what you're telling me. How did that happen?
Well, the rules of the prosecutorial commission, which the letter of the law, when this thing was created, said that the Supreme Court had to okay it. Well, October 1st, they created their rules. They submitted it to the Georgia Supreme Court, and the Georgia Supreme Court said, well, nowhere in the Constitution does it says we have to approve rules for a commission. So therefore, we have grave concerns about this commission, and we're not going to do anything. Therefore, the prosecutorial commission does not exist. It was all a lie. It was politicians kicking the buck down the road. That's all they were doing.
So where do we stand on this? What needs to be done? What's the call to action down there? Because the Fonnie Willis thing's out of control.
That's right.
Steve,
I'm working on a piece of legislation.
And what can this audience do?
I'm working on a piece of legislation called the Stop Political Persecutions Act. And this thing is going to be foolproof. Several attorneys are working on it. RICO in the state of Georgia does not have a monetary component like most states do. Some say if we added a monetary component to Georgia's RICO, well, Trump and everybody's been indicted on election stuff, not monetary stuff. What is monetary stuff? Well, that's, when you're going after drug dealers, organized crime, you can prove that they were trying to make some money. Well, that's not the case in this, and if that doesn't work, because some people could argue that maybe Trump was trying to make money by getting elected, we are going to list out every single charge that these people have been indicted with and just say those charges are not going to be associated with RICO anymore. And therefore, that would retroactively drop the charges. Fonnie Willis would be done, and it would only take a simple majority vote. Politicians and senators gave the excuse, we don't have the votes to call a special session. Well, all we need is 29 votes of 33 Republicans, and we could get this done, and we would set Trump free.
Well, you have a special session right now. Can you bring it up in this special session?
No, because the governor has set guardrails for what we can talk about in this special session, and he's only set the guardrails to make himself look good. There's something in there about some gas tax that we get to work on. And also we get to remap these racist maps that our state apparently has, according to a Democrat-appointed federal judge. That's all we can talk about, Steve. We are gag ordered, essentially, into doing any other legislative business. But we're going to have this piece of legislation at my desk here in the next couple days. And, we've been calling for a special session. They didn't want to put their signature on that. Maybe they'll put their signature on this piece of legislation. But in the meantime, for your audience, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm going to hold you through the break. I just have a question here on, you come back for a regular session in early January, correct? So if you got this worked through, you'd be able to put this forward in January. You're saying that's what you would do. And since with the Republicans control the House and the Senate, this should breeze through, correct?
That's right. I'm tired of just blowing off steam. We've got to find solutions, Steve. The first solution was to call the special session. Couldn't get the governor on board. Couldn't get any of my Rhino colleagues on board. The next step is to find a piece of legislation that sets Trump and these 19 others free.
Colton, one more time. Just walk me through briefly, succinctly, so we can understand the legislation you're going to put forward, why it's necessary, when you're going to put it forward, and then who do we hold accountable to make sure it gets passed?
Well, it's called the Stop Political Persecutions Act, and essentially what it does is it retroactively frees the 19 people that have been indicted. So we changed the law to show that it was never the legislative intent to have political prisoners in the state of Georgia. We have RICO laws to go after mafias, to go after organized crime. And essentially, this district attorney is using this to, charge these people with treason. And that was never the legislative intent. So that's what this piece of legislation does. I'm going to be introducing it over in the Senate. And then Charlize Byrd, which is the only other legislator who signed on to my special session. But in order to get these other legislators on board, we've got to get these door knockers back out. And there's one group that I trust. You can donate money, and you go to rhinowrangler.com. And that will wrangle some rhinos to hopefully sign on to this legislation so we get this passed. It only takes a simple majority, and it gets Trump and these 19 others free.
Well, but I think before anybody in this audience gives a penny to those guys, I think we need to see from you and others that there's more than just Colton Moore and one person in the House. The Republican Party's got to step up. We got to. Once you get the legislation, let's come back on. But we're going to hold these people accountable. Before people go knocking on doors and giving money to knock on doors, we got to understand what's going on. There's a rot in the heart of the Georgia Republican Party. That rot stinks across the nation, and it has to be addressed. And I'm quite frankly stunned that President Trump has been such a gentleman in dealing with these people in Georgia who he put in office and he could turn out of office if he went against them. And they should understand
Steve,
that because
he trusted them that this
MAGA's had a belly for
was going to work. And it's not.
Because they relied. Well, not just that. The people around him got to get smarter. They were played. Let's be blunt about this, because now we're getting into the danger zone. They're going to start indicting guys all over the country.
Right.
We got to close the win here. We won in 2020 and we didn't close. And we didn't close in 2020, quite frankly, because the people around President Trump were too soft. They weren't hard. President Trump did what he was supposed to do. He got 74 frickin' million votes. You can't keep putting it all on one guy. One guy's shoulders, he's got big shoulders, but he can't do this. And I tell you, in Georgia, so when you come back with the legislation, let's see how it's going to be. If you have no co-sponsors, then we don't need a door knock, because the Georgia Republican Party has told you, go put it.
You're going to be the first person that's going to get to see this legislation. Just as soon as it's drafted, I'm coming back onto your show, and the War Room Posse gets to see it first.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Where's your social media, Colton?
You can go to Real Colton Moore on X or on Facebook. Would love to have you there. There's always updates coming about.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Colton Moore from Georgia.